We do everything. We deal with it as it's in front of us. First step, bear, go up and start taking off bolts. You get underneath.
On February 7th, 2021, Billy Brown, the head of the Brown family and the central figure of the reality TV show, Alaskan Bush People, passed away after suffering a seizure. The news was confirmed by media outlets later that night. Just a few years prior, the family had appeared regularly on Discovery Channel, portrayed as a group of people, completely detached from modern society, pursuing a wild life in the mountains of Alaska. However, by 2025, the name Alaskan Bush People became associated with a series of controversial events. Some members of the Brown family were arrested and others passed away under unusual circumstances, sparking doubts about the authenticity of the show. The price of fame and the dark realities behind the lens had finally emerged. In this video, we will not only recount who has died and who is in prison. We will follow the trail of time, dissecting the unexpected twists and turns in their lives. Those who were once considered living on the fringes of society have shown that they too couldn't escape the very traps that society set: fame, money, media manipulation, and a chilling loneliness on. The Legend of Alaskan Bush People. On May 6th, 2014, millions of American viewers witnessed something unlike anything seen before on cable television: a 9-member family living in the Alaskan wilderness with no electricity, no running water, and no Wi-Fi. The show was called Alaskan Bush People, a docudrama that blended documentary with reality TV airing on Discovery Channel. From the very first moment, it pulled viewers into a world that seemed surreal, a place where people had to build houses from hand-cut timber hunt deer to survive and teach their children using paper books in the middle of the white snow. The Brown family, with father Billy, mother Amora, Amy, and 7 children with unique names like Bear, Rain, Bam Bam, and Snowbird, quickly became a phenomenon. They didn't just represent the idea of surviving in nature, but also stood as a model of a close-knit, free family that thrived outside the system. This wasn't the typical loud, view-grabbing show many viewers had grown tired of. It was something almost primitive: no makeup, no modern design, just mud axes, hunting rifles, and genuine smiles. But it was exactly this raw appearance that led to suspicions about Alaskan Bush People. Many asked, did they really live like that? Was it true that they had no internet, no cars, and no contact with the outside world? Because each episode was neatly filmed, edited meticulously, and featured drones and cinematic post-production. And while the Brown family's house appeared modest, off-the-record information showed that they still traveled between states-held hunting licenses and sometimes earned up to $500,000 per season of the show. In reality, Discovery Channel never hid the fact that this was a docudrama, not a pure documentary. This meant that in part, the story was arranged, recreated, and even directed to maximize emotional impact. But even so, the show's success was undeniable. In its first 3 years, Alaskan Bush People achieved an average rating of 4.3, drawing more than 5 million viewers per episode, an astounding number for a non-traditional, unglamorous show without celebrities. The Brown family became a brand. They appeared in the media on YouTube in wild living groups as guests on talk shows and were described as the last breath of free America. Their fans dubbed them the Wolf Pack, a loyal pack of wolves living beyond the control of civilized society. Some even migrated to Alaska just to live like them. However, behind the glory were internal conflicts. Family members began to develop individual needs, wanting to live separately, build relationships, go to school, or return to civilization. Viewers began to notice changes, fiery arguments on air-tired faces under the camera's glare, confessions about missing the city. Then in 2021, the death of Billy Brown, the irreplaceable patriarch, became the hardest blow, leading to an inevitable breakup. After Billy's death, the show continued for a few more episodes, but the energy had drained. The family split apart, rumors swirled, and in 2022, Alaskan Bush People was officially cancelled. There was no specific announcement, no final episode. It simply turned off. And since then, the lives of those once considered symbols of resistance to modern society began to spiral into a dark vortex loss crisis, addiction, lawsuits, penalties, and even death. To the sudden passing. No one in the Brown family defined the spirit of Alaskan Bush People as clearly as Billy Brown. He wasn't just the father and husband. He was the soul, the reason the whole family held on to life in the frozen Alaskan wilderness, despite the weather illness and the constant threats lurking around. But he was also the first to pass, leaving a void so large that it shattered the world he had so carefully built. Born on December 3rd, 1952 in Fort Worth, Texas, Billy had a relatively peaceful childhood until a fateful plane crash took away his parents and sister when he was just 16 years old. Alone in a world full of turmoil, Billy became an orphan, both physically and emotionally. He once wrote in his memoir, "I no longer belonged anywhere, only my hands, and a sorrow that couldn't be named." From that breaking point, Billy began to wander across the country, working as a fisherman mechanic driver and laborer. Then one day, while working in the northern seas, he met Amy, a gentle but determined woman who would later become his partner in raising 7 children. They chose to live separately from society, starting their life in the bush, a remote, cold land where there was nothing but trees and snow. It wasn't a romantic retreat like in the movies. It was an extreme choice to control their lives with their own hands. For Billy Alaskan Bush, People was a declaration, not just a TV show. He wanted the world to know that a family could survive strong and loving without relying on technology comforts or modern society. On screen, he was always decisive, inspiring, using his gravelly voice to encourage his children, teaching them to hunt, build shelters, and repair generators in the middle of winter. To the audience, he was a legendary figure, almost mythic in his nature. But real life wasn't as romantic as a TV script. By 2019, Billy began to show signs of respiratory failure. It started with persistent coughs, then brief fainting spells. When he visited the doctor, they discovered serious cardiovascular problems and immediately advised him to leave the high-altitude area where the family lived. But Billy refused. He told his wife and children, "If I have to die, I'll die here in this land, not in a cold hospital." That choice ultimately cost him his life. On the night of February 7th, 2021, Billy Brown suffered a seizure at home. Despite the quick call for medical help, all efforts were in vain. He passed away at the age of 68, right on the pinewood bed he had built with his own hands. His son Bear posted a tearful Instagram photo of the family with a caption, "Dad lived exactly how he believed, in the margins, outside the box, and for us. Now it's our turn to carry on that dream." But things were no longer simple. Billy's death was the collapse of the pillar that held the family together, and the remaining branches began to fall apart. No one was ready to take over that central role. Amy fell into depression. Rain quietly disappeared from social media. Bear began showing signs of psychological instability, and the other sons scattered, each going in a different direction. More painfully, the media didn't give them time to recover. News outlets rushed to uncover details about the funeral, taking photos of the wooden house, speculating about Billy's estate. Questions about his will, show royalties, and land began to surface. 3. The second shock. If Billy Brown was the guiding light of the family in the wilderness, Amber Branson was the shadow that few noticed. She wasn't the central figure in Alaskan Bush, people rarely appearing on screen, but in the rare instances she did, her eyes always hinted at something unsettling. A form of unspoken, unshowy trauma, persistent yet hidden. And as though it were a tragic prophecy, Amber's life ended not in the Alaskan wilderness, but in a sea of flames set by her own hands. Amber Branson was Billy Brown's granddaughter, born on February 8, 1976, in Wichita Falls, Texas. She appeared in some of the early episodes of the show, helping the family with logistical tasks, especially when they were still adjusting to the harsh lifestyle. But unlike the main Brown family members, Amber couldn't fully integrate. She often avoided the cameras, spoke little, and carried a notebook where she doodled strange, abstract shapes. After stepping away from the show, Amber led a quiet life. She married Sean Austin and had 2 children, Braden and Jace. However, her marriage quietly fell apart. There were no scandals, no media frenzy. Just a woman slowly sinking into a deep well of depression and addiction. No cameras, no directors, no scripted lines. Family members revealed that Amber had tried to pick herself up. She sought psychological treatment, joined support groups for addiction recovery. At one point, Amber even considered returning to Alaska to appear in a spin-off of Alaskan Bush People. But that intention never materialized. On April 29, 2023, Hudson Oaks, Texas police received an emergency call from a neighbor. A woman was lying motionless in the front yard, her body completely charred. Upon arrival, they discovered it was Amber, with over 90% of her body severely burned. In her final words as she was rushed to the hospital, she whispered to the police, "It's a test of faith." Amber had set herself on fire, using insect repellent spray as an accelerant. At the scene, police found a gas can thrown over a fence, along with chaotic scribbled papers, part Bible, part diary, and part disconnected poetry. She passed away the next morning, April 30th, at the Dallas Burn Center. Her family decided to withdraw life support after doctors confirmed her injuries were unrecoverable. Amber's death was not aired on television, nor did it have any wilderness backdrop. But it was no less shocking. Those who had known her even briefly were stunned. She had once been part of the Alaskan Bush People dream. And now, she was a living testament to the nightmare behind the cameras. Amy Brown, Billy's wife, and Amber's aunt, was nearly shattered. They had a special bond within the family. Amy had taken Amber in for a few months after Amber's divorce. And when she heard the news of her niece's tragic passing, she said just one thing to the press: "There are some pains too great to name, leaving only silence." The media once again exploded. Amber's death raised questions about the psychological responsibility of reality television for its participants, even the minor ones. Should someone with a history of mental illness have been placed in front of the cameras? Did the spotlight exacerbate Amber's hidden depression? While it's impossible to say for certain, one thing is undeniable: her death was another deep wound to the already fractured Brown family. From this point, the psychological scars within the family were no longer mere shadows. They began to surface, obvious, intense, and undeniable. And like an oil spill, everything began to spiral downward, quickly and uncontrollably. 4. The next catastrophe. If Alaskan Bush People ever had a character whose presence on screen could captivate audiences within 30 seconds, it was Bear Brown. His real name is Solomon Isaiah Freedom Brown, but everyone knows him as Bear, a name that perfectly matches his wild, noisy, passionate, and reckless personality. He's the guy who runs barefoot through the snow, climbs trees without safety gear, and howls like a wolf in the wilderness just to demonstrate absolute freedom. In the eyes of millions of viewers, Bear embodied a primal identity that modern society had long since lost. But living so close to the edge of emotion, Bear lacked the ability to control himself. And when the spotlight dimmed, the energy that once excited people turned into a powder keg, leading to violence. Behind his fiery smile was a fragile psyche, one that by 2022 would finally explode. In 2018, Bear began a relationship with Raven Adams, a young woman he met at his brother Noah's wedding. Raven wasn't the typical bush girl. She came from the city, worked as a photography assistant for her mother, and lived by conventional principles. But their love, initially a wild, poetic story, soon turned into a tragedy. They went public with their relationship in 2019, got engaged in 2020, broke up in 2021, then reunited, and had a child together. Their relationship was on again, off again, sometimes passionate, sometimes volatile. On social media, fans once hailed them as the undying couple, but internally they were both breaking apart. Raven frequently posted cryptic stories. Not everyone who says they love you knows how to keep you. And Bear still. Bear responded with handwritten notes. Posted online, "I love my wife more than the world, but no one understands what I'm struggling with." On March 11th, 2022, Bear was arrested by Washington State Police on charges of fourth-degree domestic violence assault. According to the Okanogan County Sheriff's Department, Raven called 911 after a heated argument. While there was no indication of alcohol or drugs, Raven said she felt unsafe for herself and her son. Bear was jailed for 3 days without bail. He didn't deny the argument, but claimed that everything had been exaggerated. In a subsequent court hearing, he took a plea deal, avoiding prison time, but required to attend anger management classes and serve 12 months of probation. Since then, Bear has lived more quietly, staying out of the public eye. His once vibrant social media account now only features a few old photos and gloomy posts. There are some battles you must fight alone. No one saves you but you. For the viewers who once called him the King of Extreme, this incident was a huge shock. They couldn't understand how someone who once said freedom is everything could now be trapped by his own actions. But for those closest to him, it wasn't a surprise. Bear had always been an emotional time bomb. No one knew when it would explode. And when the cameras were gone, when there was no script, no crew to keep things under control, his anger, sadness, hurt, and insecurity erupted like wildfire. Once a symbol of energy, Bear became the clearest example of the dark side of reality TV characters. People had cheered him on as he climbed mountains, rolled in the snow, and howled in the forest, but no one had taught him how to confront psychological trauma. Ironically, the man who once lived outside the boundaries of modern society was now bound by the very legal system he once disregarded. Just as Billy's shadow had begun to fade, Bear dragged the family into another media storm, and the chain of collapses continued without pause. 5. Joshua Bam Bam Brown the fraud case. Joshua Brown, better known as Bam Bam, was the silent brain behind the Brown family's homesteading projects. He was the quiet, meticulous one, focused on fixing generators, welding electronic circuits, and drawing blueprints for the log cabin tasks that the audience often overlooked, but were the backbone of their survival. If Alaskan Bush People was a living, breathing machine, then Bam was its processor. Therefore, when his name appeared on a criminal indictment in 2014, many were left to wonder, could the most intelligent person in the Brown family really be involved in a fraud? Born on September 18th, 1984, Bam grew up in the Alaskan wilderness, like his siblings, but always showed a distinct difference in character. While Bear climbed trees and howled, Bam was assembling radio antennas. While the others hunted deer, he experimented with setting up solar panels. Bam's quiet demeanor and systematic thinking made him the odd one out in a family known for their wild lifestyle, and this also made him highly regarded by the public for his intellect and rationale. He had almost no scandals to his name, until the law came knocking. In 2014, the state of Alaska launched a wide investigation into fraud involving the Alaska Permanent Fund money granted to permanent residents to help cover living expenses in the harsh Alaskan environment. According to the investigation records from 2011 to 2013, the Brown family, including Billy Amy and 4 children, Bam included, falsified their residency to receive up to $8,000 per person per year in benefits, despite not living full-time in Alaska during that period. The investigation lasted several months, resulting in Billy and Bam Bam pleading guilty to second-degree false statement in official documents. The outcome, both were sentenced to 30 days in jail, required to repay the funds, fined tens of thousands of dollars, and permanently barred from applying for the benefit in the future. Bam had to pay back $174 and was fined an additional $2,000. While the sentence was not long, the damage to their public image was immense. Viewers were shocked. They couldn't believe that the person who once said on air, "Every dollar I spend is from hard work," could be involved in such a fraudulent scheme. For the media, the case was the push to unravel Alaskan Bush People. Did they really live off the grid, or were they simply acting to rake in money and fame? After the trial, Bam took a break from the show. He moved temporarily to the lower 48, a term used in Alaska to refer to the rest of the United States. During this time, Bam met Allison Kagan, a television producer who had worked for Discovery. They quietly fell in love without posting pictures or going public about their relationship. It wasn't until 2017 that their relationship was revealed, leaving fans bewildered. The most reserved, meticulous, and clean member of the Brown family was now involved with someone from the TV industry. Could there be a conflict of interest? Bam refused to comment. He didn't argue, didn't retaliate. He simply continued living his life, building a houseboat on the river with Allison. He began focusing on his passions for photography, electronics, and writing a blog on renewable energy. That was Bam, just as he had said on the show, "I just want to live by my own logic without needing anyone to understand." However, even though he was no longer in prison, the echo of the fraud case still haunted Bam like a stain that couldn't be erased. For those who had once seen him as the honorable sword of the Brown family, it was a quiet betrayal. No drama, no violence. But it shook the very foundation of trust the public had placed in the family. 6. Rain Brown, the theft allegation. If Billy was the root bear the fire and Bam the intellect, Then Rain, full name Raindrop Brown, was the most fragile, the quietest, and also the most vulnerable. As the youngest of the 7 siblings, Rain had been adored by the audience as the pure symbol of Alaskan Bush People. She was the little girl playing with sheep in the white snow, the one who embroidered handkerchiefs for her mother, the sound of her laughter echoing through the freezing blizzards of the wild. But by 2025, that image was torn apart. By an accusation no one could have expected, Rain, the girl who once represented hope, was arrested for stealing over $150,000 in property. Born on October 23, 2002 in Hoonah, Alaska, Rain, the youngest in the family, had always been shielded. On the show, she wasn't tasked with hunting like her brothers, nor was she building houses like her father. But Rain was the soul of the quiet moments, calming Bear's outbursts, sitting by the wood stove reading books when everyone else was tired, quietly crying in the corner when she saw her mother, Amy, in pain from cancer. At one point, her fan page on Facebook had nearly 500,000 followers, and her fans lovingly referred to her as Little Spirit. However, growing up in front of the camera wasn't easy. After the show paused in 2021, Rain became active on social media, particularly TikTok. She quickly gained hundreds of thousands of followers, sharing videos of dancing, storytelling, and makeup tutorials. But social media is a double-edged sword. In January 2023, TikTok banned her account for violating identity impersonation policies. People thought she was impersonating herself. The incident became the target of ridicule. Tabloid headlines blared, "Rain impersonating Rain," as if her entire television career had been a performance. Although her account was later reinstated, the psychological wound was silently inflicted. Rain posted dark statuses. "Some days I don't know who I am without the cameras." Just as things seemed to be spiraling downward, she met Josiah Lawton, a chef, 6 years her senior, whom she had worked with at a restaurant in Washington. They quickly fell in love intensely and married in January 2025. In a public post, Rain wrote, "I found my love when I no longer love myself." Fans once again hoped maybe Rain had finally found her place, but just 3 months after their wedding, everything fell apart. On April 27, 2025, Rain and Josiah were arrested in Wakanda, Washington, after being accused of breaking into and stealing property from Josiah's relative's home, including $75,000 in cash, $85,000 in gold, rare, wine, 3 guns, and other valuable items. According to testimony, Josiah's uncle, Jason Eist, had informed Rain and her husband of the location of the hidden assets during his divorce proceedings and temporary move-out. A neighbor's video confirmed that the couple was seen at the crime scene. Rain was even recorded carrying a crate of wine to their truck. After their arrest, Rain was charged with first-degree theft, first-degree property damage, and second-degree trespassing. She and Josiah were held for 3 days before being released on bail awaiting trial. The public reaction was pure shock. The little girl Rain, who once sat next to her mother singing hymns, was now facing criminal charges. In a post following her arrest, Rain cryptically quoted a Bible verse, "Judge not lest ye be judged." She claimed she was the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by a former manager. "That person once stole $43,000 from me, and now they're making up stories. I just ask you, wait for the truth." But regardless of what was true or false, the damage to her image was irreversible. 7. The scandals surrounding the entire show. On February 13, 2016, a Reddit post shook the Alaskan Bush People fan community The poster, who claimed to be a behind-the-scenes crew member for Discovery, stated the Brown family doesn't live there. After filming, they go back to the hotel. The scenes where they build the house, there's a blueprint, the hunting scenes, there are cameras supporting from 4 angles. Everything is directed. In the comments section, hundreds of others chimed in, photos of Rain eating a burger in Juneau Bear, holding a new iPhone, even Billy signing autographs at a shopping mall. At first, Discovery Channel chose to remain silent, sticking to the familiar line, "This is a docudrama, not a pure documentary." But the audience didn't want to hear that excuse. For the entire 12 seasons, Alaskan Bush People never admitted to being partially fictional. Billy Brown had even said in a 2017 interview, "We don't act. We live for real, and the cameras just record that." But the reality was far different. According to reports from The Inquisitor, in 2015, the Brown family had been living in a rented house in Hunar, just a 25-minute drive from the filming site. During breaks between episodes, they didn't live in the wild, as the show claimed, but returned to an area with electricity, water, and internet. Bear had been spotted checking into a local gaming shop, playing arcade games with friends. Rain had been seen taking driving lessons at Juneau Driving School, completely opposite to her wild girl who never touched civilization image. An anonymous source from the production team revealed to The Hollywood Gossip, when filming the scene where Billy and the kids paddle a boat across the river, we always had a motorized boat, following them by a few hundred meters for rescue if they capsized. They weren't as reckless as they seemed. Safety was paramount, but the audience never saw that. Even Wolfpack Hill, Brown Town, promoted as a house built by hand in the wilderness, was actually on land rented from the local government. Building materials were flown in by helicopter, and a technical crew assisted, but had to leave before filming began. In the house building scenes aired on TV, Bear was shown swinging an axe at a tree, but the log had already been pre-cut behind the scenes. Remember in Season 5, Episode 6, Judgment Day, the scene where Billy has a heart attack and the family rushes to carry him out of the woods on a stretcher made of tarp and wood. According to a local medical staff member, Billy had already been airlifted by Airlift Northwest 2 hours prior. The entire scene of him being carried out was a reenactment. This wasn't just lying, it was manipulating the audience's emotions. It created an idealized primitive life image, while the people in the show were completely dependent on technology and urban amenities. In 2017, the scandal over the Alaska Permanent Fund fraud pushed skepticism to its peak. The Brown family was accused of falsifying their residence addresses to receive benefits meant for full-time Alaska residents from 2011 to 2013, totaling over $27,000. Both Billy and Joshua Bam Bam were sentenced to 30 days of probation, fined, and permanently banned from receiving this benefit. What's even more ironic, at the same time, Billy was still telling global audiences, "Our family doesn't need anyone's help." It was incredibly ironic that the state of Alaska, the very place they claimed to be living off of their bare hands, was the one providing them with living assistance while they earned hundreds of thousands of dollars per season from Discovery. In 2020, Anchorage Daily News published Billy Brown's financial disclosures. The average pay per episode was $20,000 per person, while the production cost of one episode was over $250,000, equivalent to a high-budget TV show. This meant they didn't live to survive. They lived to play the role of survival and were paid extremely well for doing so. Then came social media, where the dream shattered entirely. From 2022 to 2024, Hundreds of exposing videos appeared on TikTok and YouTube, Juneau residents telling stories about seeing rain at a tattoo shop, cameramen sharing behind-the-scenes footage that wasn't edited, photos of a truck unloading fast food near the house in the wilderness. These seemingly small, heartbreaking moments, when added together, became undeniable proof Alaskan Bush People was an artificially created world crafted from desire and manipulating that desire to make money. And so, trust collapsed, not because anyone went to jail, but because millions who had watched the show had once believed and felt exploited. Discovery Channel, once a trusted science network, became the subject of criticism for commercializing human emotions, creating something they called emotional fiction. Emotional marketing under the guise of truth. By 2025, they quietly withdrew from the franchise, neither announcing the show's cancellation nor calling for a goodbye, acting as if nothing had ever existed. But what remained, painfully, was a trust that had been stolen. People had watched the show to feel freedom, but now only felt betrayed. Yet the big question remained: would the show or the Brown family ever have a chance to restore their image, or had all doors closed forever? In theory, American television is not short on examples of dramatic comebacks. Robert Downey Jr. had been to prison and struggled with drugs before becoming Iron Man. Tiger Woods had sunk deep into a sex scandal and then reclaimed his major titles. The American public loves redemption stories, loves the rising from the ashes narrative. But Alaskan Bush People faced a different challenge. The wound they inflicted wasn't personal behavior, but public trust in their authenticity. They weren't just celebrities who made a mistake. They were those who sold a fake dream under the mask of truth. And that made the audience feel deceived, a feeling far harder to forgive than mere disappointment. Even worse, the scandal didn't happen once and then end. It built up over time, like dust on glass, from the fraud of the benefit-staged survival situations to Bear Rain and Bam Bam's arrests. Each scandal brought down another piece of the family of the wild image. By 2025, what was left wasn't an icon, but a heap of wreckage, difficult to reconcile into an apology of any weight. So what could save them? Some media analysts argue there's only one way: absolute transparency and a redefinition of themselves. Not a return to a season 14. Continuing the old story, but starting anew with a serious documentary film. Let the Brown family themselves tell the story. We lied. This is the truth. Here's why. Here's what we've learned. A model to consider is The Vow HBO, a documentary series that allowed former members of the NXIVM cult to expose the mistakes they made and their consequences, or Surviving R. Kelly, which allowed victims and related figures to face the public spotlight, to redeem their reputations while also taking responsibility. However, to date, no member of the Brown family has publicly admitted fault. No apologies, no accountability. All the audience sees is silence, or worse, cryptic Instagram posts, as if they're still living in their own roles. Thank you for watching this video. The story of Alaskan Bush People is a powerful reminder that after the television spotlight, the truth can be completely different. From being icons of the wild to a string of scandals and loss, they leave behind a bitter lesson about trust and the cost of deceit. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you found this video useful. See you in the next story.